Well, good evening, everyone. Nosoi Tha. Good evening and welcome to the next in the series of Winter Talks held by Glenmorgan County Cricket Club. And I'm delighted to say this evening we have one of our favourite sons, someone who has won as much silverware in recent times as any Glenmorgan cricketer of the recent past. Of course, I'm talking about Glenmorgan's former all-rounder, Adrian Dale. Good evening, Adrian.
Good evening. Nice to be here.
Yeah, well, it's great that you're joining us. It's not actually good evening, is it? Because where you are, just let everyone know where you are and what the time of day is.
Look, I'm in Auckland, New Zealand, where I've been for the past 16 years, since I emigrated here. My wife's a New Zealander. Two of my three children were born in Cardiff, but in Newport, sorry, and then my third was born over here. So obviously strong New Zealand connections. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's not super early. We actually had a catch up of many of the 1997 sort of players that played in that sort of championship winning squad, really. A couple of months ago, it was one of those sort of COVID catch-ups, and that was more at like 5 in the morning. So I'm grateful for you to sort of manage the times to make it a bit easier for me.
Great. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I have one question just to start off with, though. Given where you are, and please note the positive thinking on my behalf, when Wales meet New Zealand in the final of the Rugby World Cup in a couple of years' time, who are you going to be rooting for?
Totally Wales, 100%.
Good.
100%. Yeah.
Great. We can carry on with the talk now because okay. As always, I've got a series of photographs which I'm just going to start off with. So for those people on the call this evening, we're just going to go down memory lane and we're just going to recall, hopefully, some of the great moments of Adrian's career. So hopefully everyone can see that. Is there a thumbs up, Adrian, from you? Brilliant.
More here there.
Yeah, I was going to say, but of course you have plenty to celebrate. Now you made your debut for Glenmorgan in second 11 cricket way back in 1986. You were then still a schoolboy in Chepstow. We'll talk about your we'll talk about your early years in a minute. And at the same time, as I hope this is going to move forward, at the same time you then went to school, as I say, in Chepstow, and then went off to Swansea University. I'm just going to have to do this again. I do apologize, Adrian. The technology, here we go. The technology just, all right, this will be on, it'll be all right on the night version number 2, I'm sure, when it comes. So I'll just try it once more. Here we go. Fantastic. So you played as well for the Glenmorgan Colts, like many of our other great stars from the 1990s. And then you made your first team debut in 1989. I think, though, if I'm right in saying, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, your actual first team debut was in a Sunday League match, actually at Hull against Yorkshire. Not many Glenmorgan players can say that they actually made their debuts in Hull. Some may have had a fairly poor debut. They may have thought it was hell, but for you, it was definitely Hull. You also then starred in the Combined Universities team that met with great success in the Benson and Hedges competition in 1989. We'll talk about your time there and how you reached the final stages of that knockout competition. We'll talk as well about your batting and your maiden 100 for Glamorgan, which came up, in fact, in the Southern Hemisphere in Bulawayo, and then your first one for Glamorgan in the Northern Hemisphere at that delightful ground, which I think is cricketing heaven, called Avenue Road, Abergavenny. So that'll bring back, I'm sure, some happy memories for the people on the call this evening. You won your Glamorgan cap in 1992. There on the left, the Glamorgan captain at the time, Alan Butcher, handing it over to a very youthful Adrian Dale. And from there, well, your career really took off, because in 1993, you and a certain Viv Richards added no less than 425 runs for the fourth wicket against Middlesex at Sophia Gardens. It's still in the annals of the great club as the highest partnership for any wicket. You're walking off there with 214 runs to your name. And of course, as you would expect from the current Glamorgan scorer, here's the scoreboard, everything balanced at the time, with you there, 214, batting at number 3. You can see number 5, Viv Richards, 224 not out. Quite amazingly, it says there are only 61 overs bowled and a total of 562 for 3. We won't talk about the result. I'll leave you to go through that when you start talking in a couple of minutes' time. But of course, in 1993, we remember you in particular as well as being a member of the Glamorgan team that won the first one-day trophy in the club's history. You also had a fine run in the team, taking a career best bowling performance against Warwickshire at Sophia Gardens, and in that never to be forgotten game at Canterbury in 1993. Never to be forgotten game, never to be forgotten sing-song by Crofty, probably an entrant there for the Eurovision Song Contest, perhaps. And of course, the great, in the foreground there, the great Viv Richards, who I know you'll be able to talk about in a few minutes' time. And another man on the extreme left, who I know played an important role in your early career, the great Alan Jones. Well, from there, it was England A to South Africa, rubbing shoulders with some quite illustrious names. You had Hugh Morris and Robert Croft in the party as well. So there was a decent glammy contingent. Then we move on to more happy days. 1997, I can see your choice there, very wise one, of the Moet and Chandon champagne. I can see Steve Watkin for once on the lager. But of course, it was Taunton 1997. Glamorgan had just won the county championship, defeating Somerset, and the county title for the 3rd time coming back home to Wales. There are other members of the 1997 team. We can see on the back row, extreme right, Waka Eunice, outstanding fast bowler. A very young Mike Powell. We can see at the centre of the back row, Steve Watkin. We can see Adrian Shaw, Andrew Davis, Alan Evans and Gary Butcher. The 3 of those who all played a bit part, you might say, in the championship, but at least they are members of a championship winning squad. And at the front, your good friend, Steve James, club captain, Matthew Maynard, lurking as well, Dean Koska with Darren Thomas, Tony Cotty, Hugh Morris, unable to be in that photo because by then he was working for the England and Wales Cricket Board at Lords. Mentioning Lords, in the year 2000, there you are in the special shirt that was commissioned for the Benson and Hedges Cup final, the 10th of June in the year 2000, Glamorgan against Gloucestershire. So again, not only are you a championship winner, you can add to your list of achievements someone who's played in a one-day final at Lords. That year, the year 2000, as well as the year 2001, you were also Glamorgan Player of the Year. There you are, receiving the trophy from Scott Waddington, the CEO of Brains Brewery, having been appointed Glenmorgan Player of the Year, as I say, in the year 2000. The year 2001 also saw you score a double hundred again, this time at Northampton. I know in that photo it is Essex, but I liked in particular that photo because, of course, you were renowned for your very crisp and very clean shots on the leg side. And I can remember watching and scoring that game back in 2001. It was decorated by many of your trademark leg side shots. Well, then 2002, another piece of silverware, another medal going into the Adrian Dale trophy cabinet. There you are on the extreme right. I don't think you're trying to put that bottle of beer up your nose, but there you are together with Steve James, the rest of the Glenmorgan squad that had won the Sunday League title once again at Canterbury, once again beating Kent, and you can see the trophy there. Steve James, the club captain, unable through injury to make it onto the field in that game, but Captain Robert Croft stood in, and you can see the happy faces, the happy smiles there from the Glenmorgan team. 2002 was also your benefit year, and I know you made a very, very respectable sum, which reflects the affection in which you're held by Glenmorgan supporters. Of course, everyone on the call this evening, I'm sure, will have contributed to it. Also, of course, in 2003, you also played for Wales in the matches that took place against England at Sophia Gardens. Here you are bowling to Marcus Trescothick. And of course, in that first game against England, it was a Wales victory. I'm sure the same will happen in the rugby in a few weeks' time. 2004, again, another piece of silverware going into the trophy cabinet, as you, Adrian, were a member, now very much in your senior capacity, a member of Robert Croft's Tote Sport Sunday League winning squad. Of course, a gentleman who we mustn't forget this evening, a gentleman who we must remember as well, the coach of the Glenmorgan team in 2004, a man who's held very, very close to everyone's heart. Of course, sadly, no longer with us, but the late, but the very great John Derrick. And I'm sure we'll hear from you, Adrian, your own tribute to a man who helped to shape not just one winning team in 2004, but several beforehand, as well as helping to groom other players in subsequent years. Well, 2004 also saw you make it to T20 Finals Day. So there you are. You've got the full house: Lord's final, one day Sunday League final, and also a T20 final appearance against the Leicestershire Foxes in the semi-final. And that, though, 2004 was the end, though, of your county career. You hung your bat up, you hung your bowling boots up, having played, and I'm aggregating, by the way, all of your appearances, both in T20, in List A, and in first-class cricket. So all of your major first 11 appearances for Glenmorgan. If you look on the internet, as I'm sure your good friends Steve James and Steve Watkin and Robert Croft are doing there, but 574 appearances, 19,234 runs, and 25 hundreds. And with the ball as well in Glenmorgan first 11, 486 wickets. The supreme all-rounder then that Adrian Dale is. So we've got lots to talk about this evening. Lots and lots and lots to talk about. So I'll end the slideshow there. Again, apologies, the gremlins having affected us once again. But Adrian, let's start off by going back to the beginning and we have to go to the Southern Hemisphere as well, because you were born near Johannesburg in 1968.
I was, yeah. My father was an engineer. He went out to South Africa with my mum. It was you know, a big brave decision in those days to sort of up sticks from South Wales and sort of head out there. He had I believe an engineering sort of contract, and the family went there with a full expectation of sort of staying there. I guess I was born out there, but there was you know, I think it was my my mum's mum, which was not well, and the family came back to sort of pay their last sort of respects, and she hung on and hung on and hung on for a lot longer than was expected. And I think at that point, my mum and dad had sort of integrated back into life in South Wales and in Chepstow, and just decided to stay. So I guess it was sort of a real close call. I could be speaking with a South African accent right now, so it was pretty close. But sort of no regrets. Had a beautiful upbringing, but I was only 6 months when I came back from South Africa, so that's like a myth when people think that I have got anything, you know, real close connection with South Africa. I really don't.
Yeah, and you spent then your formative years in Chepstow. So talk me through in terms of your early coaches or your role models, and was it just cricket that you were playing?
Oh no, I played heaps and heaps of sports. So we didn't quite get the sort of range of, I guess, the sports options at school like many get this day. Chepstow Comprehensive, you literally played rugby in the winter and athletics in the summer, really. And there might have been a bit of indoor basketball or something like that when the weather was too bad to get outside. So, but I played football as well, and it just real good times. Just played for fun. Didn't even realize at that stage it was even possible to be a professional sportsman. Very naive, really, in many respects. But we didn't play cricket at my school. It's really interesting now here, because I still do some coaching now. I'm a batting coach at a school here in central Auckland called Auckland Grammar School. My boys just finished there. To give you some sort of context, I played one game of cricket ever for Chepstow Comprehensive because they heard they had quite a good cricketer, and they literally just arranged a game for me, I would say. Over here, this school that I'm coaching now has 23 cricket teams, and it's in a school. It's just enormously popular game. There's proper coaching structures. As you can imagine, all those teams would be expected to train at least once a week if you were sort of a lower grade, and twice a week if you're a higher grade. So, you know, a real sort of difference between the sort of sporting structures in schools that I experienced growing up myself, and my boy has just experienced in his school years.
Yeah, obviously those early years are all so important in terms of good habits, in terms of playing on good surfaces, and also having all the right advice from the right people. So as you were emerging as a young cricketer, who was it that you modelled yourself on?
I didn't really model myself on anyone. I just played for what felt natural for me. My father was a very, very good club player. I grew up in Chepstow, 100 metres away from the cricket club. So, I mean, it was a field that I played on, even not during the cricket season. We were caught up with mates and we kicked the ball around. My dad was heavily involved in that club. So I guess that's where that sort of love of sport and love of cricket sort of came in. My father sort of passed last year, and they actually named the school board at Chepstow Cricket Club the John Dale School Board, which it's a great honour. And so really it was from my father. And there was a guy there called Charles Toole, who was a good club player there as well, who really sort of tried to sort of, technically, because you know what we're like, we never listen to our fathers as much as we should. So it's that's what we sort of did. I played just played, didn't play school, just played with men from a young age, which I thought was a good learning curve, even though I probably didn't appreciate it at the time. Just got into it, and Saturday could never come around quick enough, really.
And how did you come to Glenmorgan's attention? I know in the early 90s there was another wonderful man of Monmouthshire called Graham Reynolds, who did a lot of scouting, and of course the Colts system had been set up. But who was it who saw you and pointed you in the direction of Glenmorgan County Cricket Club?
It was really through that whole system through Welsh schools cricket. So managed to sort of play for Gwent, which was my sort of county at the time, which wasn't overly difficult because there wasn't a huge sort of number of players, I guess, but then a little bit more competitive to try and play for Wales. So I got into that team. I did quite well. And I think really it was the sort of Glenmorgan scouts, people like Graham, that sort of Malcolm Price, people like that sort of watched those sorts of games. And they were the people that would probably talk to, the people at Glenmorgan. And from there, I got invited to the nets in the National Stadium next to Sophia Gardens. I don't know what it's called now, but there used to be nets there. So my poor mum and dad used to drive me 35 miles from Chelmsford up to Cardiff on a weekly basis to sort of attend these nets. And from there, people like Tony Caudle and Alan Jones and people like that used to be the coaches there, and so got to train against some other aspiring cricketers. So that was the sort of pathway that I went through. And then from there on to Swansea University, Higgins, was what you said earlier. And that was really important because Glenmorgan at that time actually had a connection with the university and were able to sort of contribute to my university fees, which obviously you can imagine as a student makes life a hell of a lot easier. So what that did is stopped me, I guess, going to a university the other side of sort of England or something like that, and potentially losing that connection with Glenmorgan as could potentially happen. So with the help of Glenmorgan and some great little initiatives they had, I stayed at Swansea, and then from there played in the Colts team, and sort of, rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, before we talk about the combined universities, let's talk about the Glenmorgan Colts, because I know there are a lot of people who look back to the 1980s and then look at the successful Glenmorgan team, those photos I've just shown of the 1990s, and the one thread that is running through all those successful teams of the 1990s were those years in the Glenmorgan Colts, when you had the likes of Alan Lewis-Jones, I think it was, Jim Presty, the late Jim Presty, Alan Jones, John Steele, some real hard, tough-nosed professionals, and you as a young whippersnapper coming in and learning the ropes.
Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was a great environment. It was an environment where they instilled good habits into you. So you turned up early to prepare properly for games, properly dressed, with the right sort of attitude right from the start. They worked enormously on fielding and running between the wickets. And I absolutely believe, partnerships with Steve James, and we weren't the biggest hitters of the cricket ball, and running between the wickets was our way. And I absolutely believe that's where we learned to do it, because we often played on a lot of stodgy pitches in the South Wales League, a lot of sort of damp, not easy to sort of play traditional classic cricket strokes. So drop and run, gap and run was, and Steve James running it down a third man, as many people, that's where we learned to do that really proficiently, I believe, and it really helped us then progress into higher levels when there was a lot less balls to bit, freebies, and you had to find a way to score. And I definitely reflect on those times of learning good attitude. Fielding was so important, and the running between the wickets.
Yeah,
and obviously the batting and bowling, but it was beyond that,
Yeah. I know that a lot of people, a lot of journalists also referred to you and Steve James as the run thieves. And whereas I can remember another colleague, and sadly no longer with us, Jeff Holmes, I can remember Jeff's lilting call of "wait" in his Geordie accent. But you and Steve almost had a telepathic understanding, and it was almost like a nod and a wink or whatever, and off you go. And maybe catching counties, the close infielders not quite ready to come in and field, and clearly then a grounding in the Colts that stood you in good stead. of course, you'd gone to Swansea University primarily to read economics, but you also made it into their first cricket 11, and you came onto the radar of the combined universities. And back in those days, the 55 over competition that was held mainly in the first 2 months of the season, the Benton and Hedges competition, was zonal. It was in a series of groups as well. And one of the groups had the combined universities and some aspiring young cricketers in there. So who was in your combined universities team? Who can you remember?
Oh, I can remember a lot of them, maybe not all of them, but I mean, we had 2 future England captains in our team, Mike Atherton and Nasser Hussain. So, you know, we clearly had talent, even though at that stage no one quite knew how good these people were going to be. Steve James played, so another sort of future England player. Yeah, this guy called Chris Tolley played quite a bit for Worcestershire. Yeah. Martin Spate played for Sussex. James Boylings played for Surrey. Yeah, oh, geez, I'm not sure. I can just go through more.
Yeah, well, James Boyling, of course, now teaching at Monmouth School, and so at least half of the team. I think there was a guy called Alan Hansford as well, who played a little bit for Sussex, and you did quite well that year in 1989, and you got through to the quarterfinals of the competition. Have you got any memories of that game?
Oh, just the whole thing, really. I mean, it was just, I mean, we beat Worcester in one of the sort of group games, who were like the one-day champs at that time. They had a really, really strong sort of side, which included Ian Botham at the side, and and that was one of my, because I was still at uni then, and I got him out without score, which was a great feather in my cap. And the boys will tell you that we all went out to celebrate that night in Worcester, and tried to get into a bar, but the bouncer wouldn't let me in because he thought I'd added to. It was too starry-eyed, he thought, so he wouldn't let me in. And I said, "Come on, mate, I got Ian Botham out for a duck today." And he went, "Get out of here," and just kicked me out. So I remember that one. But he was a real gracious, I guess, loser on that day. He walked into our dressing room, walked around, shook every one of our players' hands and said, "Well done." I always remember real great sort of sporting, that's how sport should be played. And I always respected both of them from that time onwards. And we beat a strong Gloucester team. Surrey, who were pretty strong as well. We just had great memories, and of course we bottled the quarterfinal. We were so close. We only wanted sort of 60 off 10 overs with 8 wickets in hand to beat Somerset in the quarterfinal to progress. And it was just inexperience, run outs, bad decisions, just total inexperience, and we collapsed, and unfortunately didn't make it. But the great thing here is that suddenly we had all this prize money as students, which no one knew what to do with, because nobody had thought we were going to progress and win any games. And we actually ended up, the sort of organisers took us out to Barbados as a university students to go on a cricket tour out to Barbados off the winnings of getting through to the quarterfinals, which was just an amazing memory.
Yeah, I would have thought an economics student such as yourself would have had a fair idea of where to invest the earnings and the prize money. But June 1989, so after those fantastic matches in the Benton and Hedges competition, June 1989, as I said in my introduction, you make your debut for Glenmorgan in the Sunday League in the illustrious surroundings of, I think it's called the Triangle Ground in Hull. I think it's called the Triangle Ground because of its shape, not because they haven't got a bell to ring when players take to the field. Have you got any memories there of actually walking out for Glenmorgan for the first time, and there you are, having now made it as a county cricketer?
Yeah, I do remember. I remember the ground. Yeah, I remember a couple of the shots I played. So I do sort of remember. I also remember Higgers getting the sort of nod, because I think at the time that the sort of championship team were playing at Headingley then, and they were staying in a hotel in Lords, and I'm pretty sure it must have been Ravi Shastri was the overseas player at the time. So Mike Fatkin, the CEO at the time, said, "Oh, Arthur, you said you're going up, you're going to join the squad, you might get a run in the Sunday League, but can you also take up Ravi's car, because it was in for a servicing?" So he said, "Oh, it's parked out there," and it was this lovely souped up Subaru that he'd been given for the season by some generous sponsor. And I was pretty excited as a student to be driving this nice car. So I zipped up the motorway up towards sort of Leeds. And next time I can remember these flashing blue lights behind me, getting pulled over on the motorway in sort of Ravi Shastri's car, feeling, oh my God, is this like put an end to my Glenmorgan career? What an idiot, you know, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble about this. And eventually I had the courage to tell Mike what I'd done. And he said, "Oh, it's all right, don't worry about it. Boys get tickets all the time," he said. So then, and I remember then going to the bar. He didn't have actually an alcoholic drink, but Ravi Shastri was at the bar, and he was sitting next to this beautiful, beautiful lady that he was just talking to at the bar. And I was this sort of, scungy old student, spotty face. And I walked across with these keys, expecting him to sort of like, "Thank you very much, see you later, I'm busy here." And I walked across, and Ravi, I mean, he was an amazing overseas player for young players like myself. "Adrian, meet my friend, come and sit with us." And I sat and had an orange juice with him for about half an hour. You never forget how people make you feel. You might forget some of the details of what you haven't done and what you haven't done, but you never forget how people make you feel. And Ravi Shastri was an amazing, amazing overseas player for that. And I can really see why he's done so well for sort of India, because I think he's a great man manager. He can really get the best out of people, because I think he spends time to sort of with people, and he gets to sort of understand them. He always made a point of sort of doing throwdowns with the younger players, and just really trying to pull them into the environment. So yeah, so one of my great memories of that is sort of really meeting Ravi for this first time, speaking with him, and really feeling part of the setup. He was great for that.
Yeah, and a few weeks later, you go on to make your county championship debut for Glenmorgan. That was against Gloucestershire, I believe, at Bristol. Can you remember your first wicket, or do you want me to remind you?
I'll have a guess, but I'm not sure. Paul Romains?
Phil Bainbridge.
Bainbridge, yeah, okay, yeah.
Stumped by Colin Metson.
Yeah.
I've just got vague memories. I did look this up. I've got vague memories. I looked through some newspaper reports, and it may have been the classic ball down the leg side that you'd developed that telepathic relationship with Meto, and Phil Bainbridge. The report said Phil Bainbridge overbalanced. So that's
There's no need to sugarcoat it, Higgers. It was probably a pie down the leg side, and just with Meto's great skill, he was able to whip the bails off. So I'll take it.
Yeah, well, it was then a case of you finishing off your studies and graduating. And whilst you did, I think you spent a little bit of time in Zimbabwe, didn't you? Doing some coaching once you'd graduated.
Yeah. So so at the times when you were a university student, you can have something called a summer contract with Glenmorgan, which was just a very short sort of contract between when your uni studies finished, which was sort of most of the way through summer, and then till the end of the season. And at that point, with uni finished, it was like, well, what am I going to do for the winter? And so I got approached. I can't remember. It was an umpire at the time. I can't 100% remember who it was, but they said there's an opportunity for some young players to go and play a season in Zimbabwe. And it was, well, I thought, what a great opportunity. Wasn't just myself. Steve James went out. There was a couple of other guys as well from Middlesex that went out as well. Another guy called Paul Weeks, who played a bit off spinner. And we just had this amazing experience for 6 months. I mean, club cricket in Harare, where we played, is it's a strange beast. The clubs are really based on sort of ethnicity and religion. There were a couple of sort of white sides. There was a Hindu side, a Muslim side, and there was basically a black side. right? And myself and Steve James, we were there to play for the black side. So all sort of, yeah, and I guess on the basis that cricket really hadn't taken off within the sort of black community in Harare, and they wanted us to add strength to that team. So it was an amazing experience from a cricket perspective, and there was a lot of good players out there, like the Flower Brothers and people like that. But it was also just great from a cultural perspective, learning about different cultures, understanding how different people lived, and it was just fantastic. I could talk about Zimbabwe for the next hour. I had so many stories that went out there. I'll tell you one, Higgins, if I may. So we used to train at Harare Sports Club, and in Harare there's blocks. So Harare Sports Club itself was like one block surrounded by roads, and next to it was Mugabe's residence, which essentially was another block, right?
Robert Mugabe.
Robert Mugabe. And so there was a road between the two, between the cricket ground and Mugabe's residence, which you could drive down, you could walk down, but you weren't, unknown to me, you weren't allowed to stop. So I was bowling in the nets at Harare Sports Club, and some guy had whacked me out of the nets and into the road. So being the naive Welshman I walked out onto the road, sort of to find the cricket ball. And out from the bushes came this like fully camouflaged soldier, who was obviously there guarding Mugabe's residence, and with a machine gun, you know, camoed face, and whacked this machine gun into my chest, and was shouting and sort of going off his head at me. He turned me around, he shoved the machine gun in my back, marched me up the road. I didn't know what was going on. One of the Zimbabwe cricketers called Kevin Jarvis was driving. He saw what was happening, tried to stop. The guy stuck the machine gun into the car, and he said, I got to drive on. So he drove into the sports club, and the soldier is just going off his head at me. I'm so scared. And then he just stops, and almost in a very sort of, almost a British type accent, to be honest, he said, "That's your warning. Don't ever stop on this road again." And then he just let me back into the club. But if his duty was to put the heebie-jeebies at people stopping on that street, he was pretty good at his job. I tell you, I certainly never stopped there again.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that everything turned out all right after that experience, because it was actually in Bulawayo on a pre-season tour ahead of the 1991 season when you got your maiden first-class 100 for Glenmorgan, 102 against Zimbabwe, and then from the southern hemisphere to the ground which a lot of people think is cricketing heaven, Avenue Road, Abergavenny, and your maiden championship 100 for Glenmorgan, 140 against Gloucestershire. We've got some questions which have come in, which we'll cover a little bit later about favourite grounds. But having made your maiden 100 not in front of many Glenmorgan supporters in Bulawayo, how nice was it for you then to reach three figures back home, and more importantly, as a Chepstow boy, in Monmouthshire or Gwent?
Yeah, it's just such a thrill. I mean, you're absolutely right, Higgins. There's a beautiful, beautiful cricket ground there. My feelings on that day was obviously an enormous amount of pride in doing what I did, but also a amount of relief, because I'd actually been dismissed for a 97, I think it was, and a 99 before I'd got my first class 100. And I think the 99 came the week before at Edgbaston, and it was totally my own fault. Batting well, had them on the ropes. They had a part-time leggy bowling, long on and long off back. I was on 99. He bowled me a full toss. All I had to do was drive a simple shot up the ground, and I hit it back to the bowler. And then next over, when I got down the other end, I chopped on off Paul Smith and got bowled for 99. So, and against Essex, I got 97 a few weeks before that as well, when Mark Ward took an amazing sort of one-handed sort of catch, which he at sort of second or third slip. So it was a much of feelings relief to get over that sort of mental 100-run barrier. But to do, as said, in Monmouthshire, there's a lot of family and friends around. Was super special, really was special.
And the following year, you consolidated on that with further hundreds against Notts at Trent Bridge, another championship 100 against Warwickshire at Edgbaston. So laying or getting the monkey off your back for what had happened against Warwickshire the year before. And you were then presented with your Glenmorgan cap. And of course, you were able to walk around with the daffodil not in bud, because obviously that's what the uncapped players wear, but a daffodil now in full bloom. And what did it mean to you then to receive your cap?
It meant a great deal. You know, I was one of a number of players that received their cap at pretty much the same time, and we'd all really come initially from that Colts team that we originally spoke about. So there was just a core group of sort of young Welsh sort of players that had progressed to that stage. So, I mean, to get my cap was just amazing, but to get it with another group of players that we spent so much time working on the games was great. And Alan Butcher, as I saw on the photo, he's the guy that presented. He was a great, he was a really important person for me in my cricket development. What he did was he really sort of opened up the opportunity for myself and those other group of young players that got capped around the same time, people like sort of Crofty and Tony Cotty and Steve James and those sorts of players. He gave us the opportunity. So, you know, obviously if you play, it means somebody's not, right? So it's, you know, but there was a group of Glenmorgan players there at the time, which I think Alan Butcher maybe think were either on their way down or not performing at quite the right level. And it's not easy, you know, and there was people there like Ian Smith and Jeff Holmes, you know, great guy who you mentioned earlier. We sort of superseded them as the sort of all-rounders and the players in that team. So it was a bit of a changing period, quite awkward as well for a young player, you know, how to handle that because, you know, because you're always in the same environment and you know you're competing for spaces. But I mean, that's part of life, part of growing up, part of learning. You know, and it's professional sport. You just try your best. You just try and get in the team. But he was such an important man for me. So to get it off, but yeah, he flicked me a little message only a few days ago. So he's, you know, I don't keep in touch with him frequently, but just occasionally we just say hello on social media and see how things are going. So he was a really important man for me and a man I greatly respect.
Yeah, and Alan gave a superb talk when we've been doing them in the museum back at Cardiff, and he also spoke very favourably about the boys who progressed on from the Colts team, and he was saying how important it was. Could I ask Adrian, because I know when you first came in the Glenmorgan team, you were batting at number 6 or 7 in the order, but by 1992, what number were you regularly going in at?
I would say it was more around that 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, was my sort of, you know, over 15 years, you bat in a lot of positions and a lot of different sort of one-day T20 championship. But I guess I always look back and see myself as a number 3. And all the times I batted elsewhere was really just, I guess, earning my stripes and getting myself to that position, which, you know, I think I'd perform best at personally. Because Matthew Maynard, he was always at 4.
Yeah.
You know, he was just perfectly suited to that. I wasn't an opener, even though I did open at times. And we had people like Tony Cotty sort of around that 5. So it was probably 3 or sort of 6 or 6, you know, and that was probably a little low for my style of play. So 3 really became my preferred and sort of favoured sort of position. And I think where I played best, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think the records speak for themselves on that. And talking of records, let's now move into that wonderful summer of 1993. We'll talk about the one-day success in a minute, but let's talk about the championship team, because what a lot of people forget about 1993 is that for much of the first part of the season, if not into August, Glenmorgan were riding high in the championship table, and there was this game early July in 1993 against Middlesex, who themselves were riding quite high in the county table, I seem to remember. We'll talk about that particular game though in a minute, but in 1993, and for those championship games as well as the one-day games, we had Viv Richards. So just before we talk about the Middlesex game, Daly, let's just talk about Viv and Viv's impact on Glamorgan cricket.
Oh, he had an enormous impact because he was just the right type of personality and player with the sort of kudos that he had to come into that environment at that time, where we had a lot of players, you know, really striving to be as good as they could be and sort of push on to be successful with Glamorgan and maybe get to higher honours. So Viv really, he, you know, he was a winner, and he, you know, every time he took that field, he was there for one thing and one thing only, and he demanded from the people around him that exact same attitude. So, and I guess he was the first sort of player. You know, cricket can be a bit nice sometimes. You know, everybody sort of matey and pally and sort of, you know, and if you're sort of slacking a bit, 5-10% without really sort of realizing it, you could probably cruise for a little bit. But what Viv did is he told you exactly how, as he saw it, whether it was on the field at the time or in the dressing room after, and he demanded higher performances. And you know, on a over by over, ball by ball, session by session basis, you know, he'd give you a rollicking if he didn't think you'd run in hard enough on the boundaries and fail to save a two. You know, he'd be on your case, and you made sure, because it was Viv Richards telling you, you made sure that that did not happen again. You know, because A, you're a bit scared of him, right? And B, you respected him so much. And so he demanded that the people around him sort of performed with that sort of same level of intensity and sort of competitiveness that he had. So he was a great sort of winner and person to have around the team at that time. Look, and Viv's not always a nice man, you know. He's not. That's what I mean. He's got that edge on him, and he's quite prepared not to be the nice person. He's quite prepared to be the sort of, you know, the one that tells you how it is. So, you know, he could be up and down a bit. You know, you knew in the morning in the dressing rooms whether he walked in with a smile on his face or not, you know, how that could affect the mood of the team for the day, you know. But geez, when he was up and when he was firing, he brought everybody with him. And, you know, he turned us into winners, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and that was certainly the case, as I was just saying a few minutes ago, about the first part of the 1993 season. So let's go back to Sophia Gardens, and as I said, early July 1993. I can remember it was a blisteringly hot period. I was in the process of changing schools, not changing jobs. I was moving from teaching in a school in Devon to teaching at a school in Somerset. So I can remember that I'd missed the first couple of days of the, or I'd missed, sorry, the first day of the game. And I was trying to catch up on the scores. And I couldn't believe my eyes and my ears when I was hearing the scores being relayed through. But then I was lucky enough to see the end of the stand, and it was a great day for you. Or a couple of days, I should say. 214 not out, and Glamorgan, as we saw earlier on, making over 500. What are your memories of that wonderful stand?
Yeah, I remember quite a bit about it. I remember it being such a beautiful hot day. It started off, it was a really good batting wicket, which deteriorated later in the sort of over the 4 days. But the moment we put the stand on, it was flat. I mean, Middlesex had a terrific bowling lineup. They had, you know, Tufnell and Embry, two obviously high-class international spinners, and Angus Fraser, and I think Neil Williams was another England player that opened the bowling. Another guy, Neil Feltham, who was a decent all-round as well. So they had a really, really sort of decentish sort of bowling lineup, or more than decent. They were a very good bowling lineup. And yeah, we just got in. And what I really remember is Viv just constantly sort of making sure you didn't lose concentration, making sure that you know, you just kept sort of grinding out the runs. I mean, I'm sure some of the Glamorgan members might have heard me say this before, but there was one patch we were fully in control. We went into the partnership, and I think Viv was getting a little bit annoyed that I was sort of scampering between the wickets too much with Viv. I think he was a bit too cool to run those sort of quick singles. He would like to deal more in the boundaries, you know, as he did. So I do remember one particular shot where I'd, you know, Angus Fraser Bobby went on. I just timed it through the covers and it just came off the middle, and it was just going to be 4 right from the moment it sort of left the bat. But as I hit it, I started scampering because that's just the way I sort of play cricket. And by the time I got 3/4 to sort of, you know, most of the way up the other end, I see Viv there just leaning on his bat handle, and he hasn't moved. He hasn't moved from the sort of bowling, you know, from the bowling crease. And he just looked at me and went, "Don't run, man. You spoiled a shot." That's what he said to me. So, you know, I always remember him saying that. It was just a wonderful personal moment for me, and just showed it, you know, that, yeah, he was really cool. But I also remember I think they might have brought a couple of part-time bowlers on in that game as well, when the sort of main bowlers were having a bit of a rest. And that's where he got really serious. You know, don't you dare get out to the part-time bowlers. You know, what he didn't want you to do is lose your concentration and throw your wicket away. So I always remember him being really sort of aggressively grumpy about even the thought of getting out to the part-time bowlers. You know, he could maybe respect it if you got out to a good ball from the better bowlers, but don't get out to the part-timers. That used to make him mad.
Yeah. The result of the game didn't go Glenmorgan's way, because I can remember that Phil Tufnell, who you mentioned, then in the second innings went through us fairly quickly, and Middlesex ended up winning the game. But in 1993 as well, at Cardiff, have you got any memories of your 6 for 18 against Warwickshire, or is that in the dim and distant?
No, I absolutely remember it. I remember it because I actually wasn't bowling very well before then. And it was, so the Glenmorgan coach, I can't quite 100% remember who it was on the Glenmorgan coaching staff, but they said, "Why don't you go along and have a chat with Tom Cartwright?" So I came in for sort of like, they teed me up with a session with Tom Cartwright, because they said he'd gone through a stage where he had struggled to swing the ball. He was obviously a swing bowler, but he had stages through his career where he lost the ability to swing, and that's what had happened to me at that moment in time. So I had a good sort of afternoon session, coaching session, sort of bowling on the outdoor nets in Sophia Gardens with Tom Cartwright, trying to get my sort of outswinger back, which sort of, you know, was my main stock delivery. And you know, and just literally from that one session, the very next game, my very next spell, I picked up that 6 for 18 on a pretty green top, it might be fair to say, against Warwickshire. I think Dermot Reeve was playing for them and people like that. They had a pretty reasonable side, but it was a real bowler-friendly type wicket. But yeah, I managed to get my outswinger back, nicked off a few players, and yeah, it was, I think, largely down to Tom Cartwright and that afternoon session I spent with him.
Yeah, I know a lot of people rate Tom as a masterly coach, or rated, I should say, as a masterly coach, and very much the traditional coach in terms of going back to basics, and that clearly helped you on that particular occasion. I know you also had a very good spell in '93. I think it was against Durham up at Colwyn Bay, in a one-day game as well. Was it a hat trick?
Don't remember too much about that one. I think that was in a one-day game. Was it? Yeah. Can't remember too much about it. I think it was more luck than judgment. Maybe people hitting out one day, but but great. Yeah, just obviously pretty proud. But yeah, I can't remember too much about that one. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, there is a game I do know you remember, and of course we're building up now to the end of season. The game, or rather the way the Sunday League title, the AXA and Equity and Law League, as it was called, I think there was a lot of talk in the papers about Glenmorgan doing it on home soil. We had a game against Essex at Cardiff, the penultimate game, where it rained and rained, and there's a wonderful photo of Hugh Morris huddled under an umbrella with Graham Gooch, and it was more Sophia Lakes than Sophia Gardens, because in the background were puddles. So it meant Glenmorgan going down to the St Lawrence ground in Canterbury. Kent were also riding high in the table, so it was a winner takes all game. I can remember we were staying, I was lucky enough, of course, in those days to be working on BBC Wales and staying in a similar hotel with you guys. And I can remember we weren't staying in the centre of Canterbury. We were staying on one of the adjoining roads. And my abiding memory is having breakfast with our mutual friend, Fred Raffle. And I can remember these people just walking past and heading towards the ground. And it was breakfast time. I don't know what your memories of the early part of that particular day are.
Yeah, it was. There was enormous queues outside the ground from early. I mean, we went to the ground early, but it was luckily we did, because traffic became an issue for those that sort of left it a little late. But it was just an amazing sort of to see. You know, I think it was Viv's last game for Glenmorgan, or if not close to it. And you know, we started off that season really poorly. We'd lost in that league. I think we lost our first 2-3 games or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we just went on this massive sort of winning run. We had really sort of consistent bowlers, you know, people like Roland Lefevre, Steve Barwick, you know, Robert Crofts and Steve Watt, you know, really sort of consistent. We had Hugh Morris as the captain, sort of, you know, we like did the same warm up every week. We had this real sort of routine that we got into. Everyone knew exactly where they were going to sort of field and what they were going to do and what their roles were in the side. It was a really structured sort of formation that we had at that time. And it was just amazing the way it worked out to have that Viv's last game on a beautiful sunny day in Canterbury, you know, beautiful, amazing crowd. And obviously, I just remember as we headed towards that victory target, and by that stage I was already out, I was so nervous in the dressing room. I had butterflies in my stomach, which were like cramping. And at times I literally had to not watch the game. I had to go and hide and sort of go around the back of the dressing room, sit on the Lincoln toilet around the back for a while, even though not doing anything, just sitting there, because I was so nervous. And so, yeah, I'd never felt butterflies like that in my life. And to get across the line,
yeah,
it was just amazing. Yeah, I remember a few wickets in the game. I remember Yorking Nigel Long. I remember catching Cole Hooper at mid-wicket off Steve Barwick, which was a crucial wicket because he at that time was just, you know, a star player. And I also remember facing Duncan Spencer.
yes,
Who was a really, really quick bowler at the time. It just came and went very quickly for reasons unbeknown to me, but he was really quick. Viv rated him as one of the quickest that he faced, but he hit me in the rib in that final. Actually broke my rib when I was batting. He absolutely thudded one just under my sort of armpit, and luckily I think it was like the last game of the season. There might have been one day of championship cricket left to play, and so I was able just to let it heal naturally over time. I didn't miss any cricket, but yeah, he cracked my rib, bowled a blistering spell, but we got through it. And well, who can forget Tony Cotley getting the winning runs and him and Viv running off? It was just so special.
Yeah, and there was Duncan Spencer as well, bowling the infamous no ball that was called by the umpire to Viv, and it was really from that point onwards that you knew that, or you just had a feeling that it was going to be our day. I know there'd been a game earlier in the season in the 60 over, I think it was, in the Gillette Cup at Hove against Sussex, where it seemed to be our day. But then there was a run out. I think this was the year before cameras came in to cover the knockout games in the one-day competition. And I know that Viv was going well, and then there was a run out. And so things hadn't gone in our favour at Hove in that game against Sussex, but things most definitely went in our favour at Canterbury. And that lovely straight drive, although it was a drive back over the wicketkeeper's head by Tony Cotley, hitting it for 4, and the celebrations afterwards, and the celebrations in that wonderful little pub on the corner by the entrance to the ground called the Bat and Ball, and memories, of course, that everyone will savour and will keep with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And you know, I think what the team that particular team, because I think it was just so Welsh based, we had a really sort of strong, I feel, connection with the supporters. Yeah, I don't know what it's like now, but at that time, I just really felt we had this amazing connection with our supporters. So it was not uncommon then for us there not to go away somewhere and sort of do something on our own. We would join in with the supporters and go to the pub and have a big sing-song with the supporters. It was just great fun. It was just, I mean, some of the most amazing memories you could ever wish for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that even though the game was at the St Lawrence ground, probably one of the furthest grounds away from South Wales, there were so many people there, and people wearing the blue and yellow replica shirts. There'd been a fantastic marketing campaign, and we certainly reaped the rewards from that. And you personally had plenty to look back on at the end of the 93 season. It was your best ever season in first class cricket, with nearly 1,500 first class runs, and no surprises. Then at the end of the summer, you were chosen, along with Hugh Morris and Robert Croft, in the England A tour to South Africa. Can you remember some of the people who were in the party with you?
Yeah, pretty much all of them, Higgers. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get that question asked a lot from people that, you know, maybe knew you played cricket but didn't quite know that much about you. And one of the questions how close were you to playing for England? And I guess the way I sort of can describe it to everybody is that I got to an England A team, which at the time their selection policy was second best team. I guess that's the way they sort of viewed it. And 13 of that 14-man squad went on to play for England in some shape or form, and one didn't. And I unfortunately was the one. So I was the only player from that team that never actually went on to play for England in any format. So there's people like John Crawley, Mark Lathwell, Mark Eilert, Martin McCaig, Darren Goff, Dominic Cork, Steve Rhodes was the keeper, one of the keepers. Paul Taylor from Notts, left-arm seamer, came. Yeah, there was
a
quite easily. Peter Such.
And Martin Bicknell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So some super cricketers there.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
Have you got any particular memories of the tour? Any one performance, any one match that sticks out in your memory?
Yeah, look, I think I played okay-ish a few times, but what I didn't really do was sort of set the world alight. But I mean, what was great was obviously going back to South Africa, which was the country of my birth. And then, because my father had always told me about playing when he played cricket out for the Wanderers Cricket Club, which is obviously based where the Wanderers Stadium is in Joburg. So to play there at the Wanderers ground where my dad used to play, and getting a few, I don't think I get runs, but I got a few wickets, including Jimmy Cook at the time, sort of caught short leg, who was one of the sort of star players. Just to play, on that ground. The fact my father had played there was just super amazing. But of course, what that tour was as well, it was the very first official cricket tour. No, in fact, it was the very first official sports tour to South Africa after apartheid. So not only was it just a cricket tour, it was also very, very important for South Africa and very important for us as the England team to represent what the tour was about, which was a little bit beyond just a cricket tour. So we played games in some of the townships, like in Alexandria, as well as some of the sort of big stadia. So, you know, one day you might be playing on sort of in Cape Town at Newlands, and then next you're playing on sort of, this newly created ground in this sort of shanty town in Alexandria, because it was as much about recognizing, you know, the new way forward for South Africa as it was a cricket tour. So so those were amazing memories as well.
Yeah. Did you in the townships, did you do any coaching? Were there special sessions there as well?
No, I don't remember doing any sessions. It was just more being there, talking to people, walking around the boundary, just being yourselves, friendly, and just talking to people, and just I mean, we really went in, played the game, and came out. I don't think we spent a lot of time coaching and stuff, but I mean, still, I think it was a really good thing to do.
Yeah. Well, you came back clearly in the selectors' thoughts, as you said. The England Day party back then was virtually the England second 11 or the England third 11. You were clearly in the selectors' thoughts, but you consolidated in 1994. I believe you had a list A 100 against Lincolnshire at Swansea, 110. But you also, though, started to pick up a few little niggly back injuries, I believe.
Yeah, I had them really throughout my career. A few back injuries. It could go from the sublime to the ridiculous. I could literally not be able to walk, in the morning, and then be able to run freely and run around normally in the afternoon. It could be, it could be like that. But to be honest, I came back from that England A tour and I had a poor year the year after. And to be fair, it wasn't really, I don't think, the injury. I think you're being nice to me there, Higgers. It was the weight of, when you come back from a tour like that, you come back with more of a weight of expectation, more scrutiny on you. And to be honest, I really struggled with that. I really struggled having that sort of, I much preferred to play just sort of, without that. And I just found that extra scrutiny, maybe a bigger, price tag on my wicket, more of a sought after sort of wicket. I couldn't just back, sensibly other side to people like Matthew Maynard. They equally targeted me. And I just failed really to, I think mentally as much as anything, be able to perform at that same level I did the year before because of that weight of expectation. And then I just dropped off the radar pretty much.
But even so, in 1996, I know there was a match-winning 100 that you had in the game against Northamptonshire in the Championship, where it was one of those it was a match-winning 100, as I say. Have you got any memories of? Not
so much that one, no. No, I don't particularly have that one, sorry, Higgers, but I just remember from that England A tour the next season, and then it just took me a while to build up to, I feel as though it was the levels that I was at that year prior to me, which I think I did, but it just took me a few seasons to do again. Of course, in between, I'd have a few good performances, but also a lot of poor performances as well, really. So, yeah.
But everything then came good in 1997, and a summer when Glenmorgan, having had the likes of Hamish Anthony, Otis Gibson as overseas player, now suddenly Waqar Younis, one of the finest bowlers in international cricket at the time, and the exponent of reverse swing, Waqar now suddenly in that wonderful phrase that I remember hearing chanted around the ground, Waqar is a Welshman. What was it like? What did you think when you heard that Waqar was coming to play for Glenmorgan?
Well, I was pretty excited because obviously we knew how good he was and what he could do. I guess the question mark for us is sort of homegrown players is when a player like that comes along, what's their attitude going to be like? Because you can have great players, but are they going to be cruising, or are they going to be putting in? And I guess my real memory of Waqar over that season was every session from April through to the end of the season, whether it was first in the morning with a new ball or late in the last session, geez, that guy put in every spell through that season. He was such an amazing sort of competitor. And again, he just, I was as much impressed with him about his whole attitude and approach to playing county cricket for Glenmorgan as I was in all of his ability. I've never seen a guy bowl so many guys in a county season with full tosses. You might be fielding at cover and he'd be on that long, beautiful athletic run up that he had, and he'd let one go, and then you could see the trajectory of the ball from sort of cover, and you think, oh, this is a knee high, shin high full toss, get ready, the guy's going to whack it, and the guys would play forward and it would just stumps get smashed everywhere. To have the ability to swing the ball that much in the air without even hitting the ground. You know, when he got it right up there, just amazing. I mean, good players too.
Yeah, and there was that little purple patch. I think it was the end of May, early June, where we had games first of all against Lancashire at Liverpool, and then there was the visit of Sussex, I think it was, to Swansea. Now the game at Liverpool, I know Glenmorgan batted first, and Steve James was on 99 not out at the close of play on day one. Then it rained on day two. It rained on day three, and then day four, Sid gets to his 100. Then, as was the custom in those days with Championship cricket, there was an agreement, a target was set, and the next thing we know, Wacker ate for very little, and twice could have possibly had a hat trick had it not been for dropped catches. I don't think you were one of the culprits, but no. But what are your memories of Wacker that day at Liverpool?
Well, we've been cooped up for 2 days, as you said, playing a lot of dressing room cricket, just trying to sort of fill in the hours. And obviously the pitch had been under covers and it'd been wet and it was damp. So it did look a really good wicket to bowl on. I think at the time, probably Lancashire didn't really look at Glenmorgan at that stage of the season like potential sort of championship, competitors. So I think they were quite generous with their declaration. And so what we did was, he just swung the ball. He just swung it around corners. He ran in, he got the pitch the ball up, swung it miles, and the pitch was very helpful. So it was going off the pitch as much as it was in the air. Yeah, he just cleaned them up. And I think that just really got us on a roll, that game. And then they said the game after was Sussex. And then from there, we just got that momentum and confidence, which is all important, right?
Yeah, I can remember, again, travelling around by now with you, because it was the school holidays. So I had 7 days a week, 24/7 cricket. And I can just remember a buzz and a feel, a similar sort of atmosphere in the changing rooms as we'd had back in '93. But we mustn't forget that not only were Glenmorgan riding high in the championship in '97, also doing very well in the NatWest Trophy, in the one-day competition. There was that game, quite a heated game against Hampshire at Southampton, where there was a disputed run out with Steve James. But then a game that, well, it was, I think, the only time when I've seen a Glenmorgan cricketer appear on news at 10 to the third gong. And of course, it was the game, the semi-final, the NatWest Trophy semi-final against Essex at Chelmsford. A game of 2 days, you might even say a game of two halves. But what are your particular memories of the Battle of Chelmsford?
It was feisty. It's two teams really going hard at it. We had a reputation at the time as being quite a nice team, I guess. Well respected by sort of things like the scorers and the umpires and the supporters. We'd always, just had a reputation of being very approachable and sort of, there was never any trouble with us as a team on the field. But I do remember after day one, David Constant was the umpire in that game. I got huge respect for Connie. He was a great umpire and a great man. And and I'd never known an umpire do this in all my first class sort of career. He got all the Glenmorgan team in the dressing room and gave us a ticking off. He sort of got there, he got his finger pointing, and he went around the dressing room saying, "This is not the Glenmorgan team that I have known for all these years. The way you conducted yourself out there today was not very good." And he sort of put us in our place, which I guess what we all did, and Essex as well. We all just got caught up in the heat of the battle. And there were some strange things, which I do remember Darren Thomas getting an LBW off Ronnie Irani in that game. And so these were the strange things, that he was running with his back to the batter, sort of appealing, waiting for the decision. At the same time, Ronnie Irani, because the ball's gone off his pad, is running for a leg by. Eventually, Darren gets the sort of the finger up from the umpire. He turns to punch in celebration, just as Ronnie Irani is walking past, and smacks him straight in the helmet and knocks him over. And of course, those things sort of escalate and sort of heat up. And yeah, it was just that sort of game. It was very feisty. A lot of people turned up the next day to see the sort of see which team would get over the line. But unfortunately, we got an early wicket, but weren't quite able to get Peter Such out, which was a great disappointment for us. And Essex, I guess, deservedly in the end got over the line. So we were competitive. We were there and thereabouts, but we just didn't quite make the final that year.
And perhaps that actually helped to gel everyone, because having failed in the NatWest Trophy, now it was a case of focusing on the championship. And I can remember there was a vital game again at Cardiff against I think it was either Essex or Somerset. Essex, I should say. And I know Tony Cottee had been out of form, and he came back in and played a really, really important innings. It was quite a relatively short run chase, but we'd lost early wickets. And then we go down to Taunton to meet Somerset, with Kent also breathing down our necks and all sorts of permutations. But everything went like clockwork down at Taunton. Probably one of the finest innings you could ever see from Matt Maynard. In lights, I can remember I'd been teaching in the morning, and I was able to get there for the middle of the afternoon and late afternoon. And I can remember looking up at the scoreboard. In those days, that's where the light meters were, and I can remember seeing 4 or 5 lights shining. I can remember Hugh Morris at the other end batting out of his skin. And we ended up then the following day carrying on batting. I think Matt's 100 on that particular day was achieved without even without even a single. Everything was going to the boundary. But there was just that collective feeling that you knew everything was okay. We were collecting the bonus points we needed. We had in the second innings, there was that fine spell by Darren Thomas. Dean Koska took the final wicket, and there we are on day 3, needing a handful of runs. Out go Hugh Morris and Steve James, and of course the rest is history. We did it with a day to spare. What are your particular memories of that match?
Well, I'm glad we did it with a day to spare, because I think it rained the next day, so it's pretty important that we did actually knock the game on. Yeah, so we knew that Ken had picked up the win with full bonus points. We knew. Remember, I talked earlier about that sort of butterfly in my stomach feeling when I played down in Canterbury in that game, which was the first one-day trophy that we won. My personal feeling during that championship game was the opposite of that. Whilst in sort of Kent, I didn't really feel in control. I felt enormously nervous. I think just younger and more inexperienced player. That team there at that moment in time, I always felt we were going to do it. I always felt we were in control. I just think we had that air about us that we weren't going to be pitched, and we had that sort of. We had that freedom and that confidence. Wacker, as you say, was an enormous sort of piece of that puzzle, but so was Duncan Fletcher, coming in as the coach at that time. Absolutely amazing sort of, he had the complete package. He was a great manager as well as a technical coach. So he was a really important piece of that puzzle. And then Matthew Maynard, to have that sort of fearless leader at the helm, sort of playing in the manner that he does, and sort of, charging from the front. I just felt we were unstoppable at that time. I felt confident. I felt we had a great team unit, and I always felt as though we were in control. Totally different from what I felt 4 years earlier. Yeah,
and a wonderful moment when when your good friend Steve James flicked the ball down to fine leg, the winning runs, and then half of Wales, I think, had turned up there on day 3. I know something happened with Steve James's bat, didn't it, when he was running off? And didn't your brother help to sort that out?
He did. I got to try and recall the whole story, but basically, as he came off on the field, he was just mobbed by some of the supporters, who were obviously, so excitable. And I'm pretty sure, obviously, there was a few Glenmorgan supporters that were looking for a memento. And I'm pretty sure that Steve's bat got sort of yanked out of his hand as he was sort of being carried off on the shoulders of other sort of supporters. But my brother's, well, he was at the time police officer, recently retired now, but yeah, he, I think he saw what was going on, and he flicked the badge, I think, open and chased the guy and got the bat back and gave it to Steve at the end of the day. So well done, Gaz. He might actually be listening on this call today. So yeah, good effort. Yeah.
And I can remember the celebrations, and as I was working only 25 miles up the road, I can remember that as the celebrations were just beginning to the informal, I should say, celebrations after the formal presentation, Mike Fatkin, the Glenmorgan chief exec, said, "Higgers, here you are. Here's the trophy. Don't forget to bring it to Cardiff on Monday," because it was the end of season awards dinner. And I can remember looking after the Britannic Assurance trophy, and actually, I don't think I'd had one sherbet too many, but I can remember waking up in the middle of the night thinking that I'd left the trophy in the car, and that I could hear the car alarm go. So I went running downstairs and tried to look in the car, couldn't find it, and of course there was the trophy on our dining room table. And of course it was then safely brought to Cardiff on Monday for the formal presentations. And those photos we showed earlier on were when that all took place, and a great moment. And I'm sure it won't be too long before another Glenmorgan team can actually taste victory in the championship. And I don't know, Adrian, if you are aware, but the way the county structure has been in the last few years, it's been Division 1 and Division 2. And so if you've been in Division 2, like Glenmorgan have been, you've got no chance of winning Division 1. But this year, it's all different. It's a conference style. So we actually start off the season with a chance of actually winning the championship. And I think that's got to be a good thing, knowing that the title is there up for grabs. Well,
just on that, Higgers, I mean, when we did win the title, the season before, we were in the bottom half of the table, the season before we won it. So under the current structure, up until, obviously it's changing now, but up until the current recent structure, we wouldn't have won that championship in '97, because you have to almost have 1 year to sort of win division or get promoted, and then you've got to do it the second year. So under the recent structure, we actually wouldn't have won that championship in '97.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, because I know we did something similar in the early noughties in the one-day league, where we won Division 2 and then Division 1 in consecutive seasons. But let's move on to the year 2000. And again, another highlight of your career, because as well as being a championship winner and a one-day league winner, you can also add to your cricketing CV a member of a Glenmorgan team that had played in a one-day final at Lords. The first time had been, of course, in 1977, and more recently in 2013. But in the year 2000, Glenmorgan up against the team at the time who were the one-day kings, Gloucestershire. But to get to the final, I go back to the semi-final at Cardiff, a rain-affected game, I seem to remember, against Surrey, where Matthew Maynard and Michael Powell put on a fantastic partnership, which laid the foundation. And then someone who possibly doesn't get the plaudits or the headlines, Owen Parkin, then produced a superb bowling spell. Also Alex Wharf, who'd seen the light and had joined Glenmorgan. We then go to Lords for the final. It wasn't our day. Matthew again, though, made a superb 100, but at the end of the day, we were probably 30 or 40, if not more, runs short of a good total, and Gloucestershire won. But Adrian, what are your memories of that, of those two games? First of all, the semi-final at Cardiff, and then the final at Lords.
Yeah, look, I do remember taking a catch at long on in that semi-final against Jason Ratcliffe was the batter. He smacked one on a quarters, relatively difficult catch at long on, which was quite important at the time. So I was, yeah, pretty, still remember that catch, so I knew how important it was at the time. Yeah, again, we were playing well. We were pretty confident as a team, but I think we came up against a really well-drilled one-day team in Gloucestershire under the sort of leadership of John Bracewell, obviously the New Zealander, who I hear sort of commentating a lot out here on sort of international cricket. And often he in sort of the rain breaks, he would go back and talk about those Gloucester days, including sort of the finals that they won and the one-day championships they won. He was just, I think he was just a fantastic sort of coach, especially in one-day cricket, where he just, you know, he had very fit, very sort of dynamic sort of batting lineup, and sort of a bowling attack, which, you know, just so consistent. And they were the first team, I think, that really sort of, well, along with maybe Warwickshire, who really sort of utilised all those slower balls and the variations much more than sort of other teams did. So that they were just slightly, I think, ahead of us in that sort of skill set at the time. We played well. I mean, when Matthew gets 100, we normally win. But I think that's testament to Gloucestershire's consistency throughout their sort of bowling lineup at that time, that they still managed to win despite that, because they were playing so well at the time. Yeah, they were just an unstoppable force at the time. I always felt they were in control of that game.
Yeah, but again, an abiding memory for me was Matthew getting into the 80s and then getting into the 90s. And as he got closer and closer to three figures, I can remember hearing hymns and arias coming out from the Lord's Tavern, and all those wonderful Welsh melodies ringing around the St John's Wood ground. And it was just, you know, bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. And Matthew gets into three figures. Jack Russell behind the stumps congratulates him. At least I think that's what he was doing anyway. And just wonderful memories. But just at the end of the day, not enough runs. But again, you're one of only 33 Glenmorgan cricketers who can say that they've appeared in a Lord's one-day final. And that again, hopefully, you never know that maybe in the not too dim and distant future, that number will go up from 33 to 44. I
do remember sitting on that Lord's balcony, Hagers, at the end of the day. I think it was that final. It might have actually been a different game, just come to think of it more. But I'm sitting up there with Crofty, and it was sort of just starting, the light was starting to dim. We're just sitting on the Lord's balcony, just chewing the fat about the day's play. And an urban fox starts to walk across Lord's. And Crofty, being a sort of a country boy, sort of hunter and fisher, sort of, well, he said, "Oh, geez," he said, "if I had my gun with me now, so like I'd show you how I would shoot that." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Don't you just point and shoot?" He said, No. He said, "You've got to make the fox stop first." And I said, "Well, how the hell do you do that?" And he made this sort of sound out of sort of his mouth, this weird sound. And as he did it, the fox sort of went doing like this and sort of went still, looked. I said, "Oh, that's when I would shoot it." I said, "What the hell was that sound you made?" He said, "It was the sound of an injured rabbit." I said, "So that's I don't know if he was pulling my leg or not, but he seemed like he knew what he was talking about, and he did, and that's how I would. So I always remember that story with Crofty and the fox at Lord's. That was classic.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Crofty features in the next bit because we now, as I said, go into the early noughties, and we'd won Division 2 of the National League in 2001. Steve James at the helm, and we go into 2002, your own benefit year. The boys are on a high again. We put together a series of wins in Division 1 of the one-day league, and as luck would have it. Again, it's a repeat of 1997, but we have in our side for the game at Canterbury in 2002, we have a wonderful Australian whose company we had back in January. I'm talking about Michael Kasparovich. He was, during Kaspar's talk, he was playing down his role very much, as you would expect from someone very self-deprecating. But Caspar that year, in the same way Matthew Elliott had for us, and as you said earlier about Wakar Younis and having a quality overseas player, what are your memories of Caspar, and what then are your memories of 2002 and winning the Sunday League again?
Just again, special times. Again, what you want from your overseas player is not just their ability, but it's their attitude. You want them to bring the whole package, and the best overseas players are the ones that are able to sort of fill into your culture, and to raise the bar and to lift the people around them. And Caspar, and I say this like a proper New Zealander, is not your typical Australian. He is very, very grounded, very humble, just an enormously nice man. And it was just a pleasure to play with him. Really, just a great athlete, great trier. And again, just like Wakar did, just ran in all season for us and just did the goods. He was just an amazing guy, really.
And that game at Canterbury?
Yeah, look, again, I do remember it being, again, it's always special when you win the titles. I talked earlier about it's important how, you always remember how people make you feel. And I think that was, I hope I'm not getting my Canterbury Finals mixed up here. Was that when Matthew Fleming was their captain?
Yes, yeah, I think it was his final match as well.
And I remember his speech after that game. It was just, he was a wonderful talker, and just an amazing speech about how gracious he was in defeat, and how beautifully sort of generous he was in his praise of Glenmorgan, and to speak so eloquently and so, when he was obviously massively disappointed, because it was, as you said, it was his last game. It would have meant so much to him but to still have the sort of the character to be so wonderful in defeat. I always respect that man for that, what he said that day.
Yeah, and the what proved to be the final over, Caspar coming in when one loose ball, two bad balls, flicks down to fine leg or a nick through third man for four, could have changed the destiny. But Caspar drew on all his years of experience to come up with the goods. And I think there was a run out as well. You've been very shy, Daly, because I think you actually did play quite an important role in building up the tension.
Yeah, there was. I was down at third man. I was having a lot of problems with my throwing arm at that stage, and our physio, Adrian Mustafa, I'm pretty sure, was at that stage.
Yeah.
I think he was there. Been doing a lot of work on my shoulder to try and get my arm, okay, because I think just through bowling and throwing, it was really starting to hurt every time I tried to sort of throw with any force. And I knew at that stage they were sort of pushing for twos, and I guess this was where a bit of experience. I knew that my arm wasn't brilliant. I understood what they were trying to push in the field, so I brought myself in sort of probably 10 meters further off the boundary down at third man than you would normally be. And again, it's just that experience, I guess, at that last stage of my career. And then it came down to me. I was able to attack it and throw it in the best I could, which wasn't a brilliant throw, but it was just enough. And I think the TV replay showed that the batter was out just by a small margin. I remember celebrating that wicket as much with the physio as I did any, because, again, the physio played a big part in that. And the physio hadn't got my arm to that level, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Yeah.
And again, another Canterbury tale, another early evening of sing-songs and celebrations in the pavilion, and then down to the bat and ball, 1993 revisited. and
Yeah.
a wonderful evening and wonderful memories.
Yeah, Mark Wallace, I remember standing on the table at the bat and ball, sort of leading the charge. Just brilliant. Again, celebrating with the supporters, just great fun.
Well, we'll just fast forward now to 2004, because you actually did as well, and I haven't mentioned this before, but you also played a decisive role in 2004, again in the Sunday League, now under Robert Croft. Some different faces in the team. Ian Thomas having come in. David Harrison, of course, is now featuring as well. But what Glenmorgan did, I don't think in recent times there's been any victory like this, because Glenmorgan won with the Sunday League with about 4 matches to go, and the winning game wasn't covered by Sky TV. Of course, it was covered by Edward Bevan, Don Shepherd, and the Chalker, and it was on Radio Wales. It was against Lancashire at Colwyn Bay, and I can remember a massive crowd again turning up. No TV cameras there, but actually now, Daly, winning a title on Welsh soil, and you actually hit the winning runs when we beat Lancashire. So what are your memories of that particular day?
Hitting those winning runs. I think it was Sarge Mahmood, I think was the bowler, and he sort of, he drifted one into my legs, shot you talked about earlier, right into my sort of wheelhouse, and I flicked him away, small ground at Colwyn Bay, down to the boundary, to win the game. It was just such a special moment, but I knew that was going to be my last year at that stage, and I had an interesting conversation with John Derrick, after that game. I said, should we, should I call it quits there? No, I've just hit the winning runs for a successful Glenmorgan side. Should I call it a day? And we had a conversation, we thought about it over a couple of beers, and John's thought was, he said, no, mate, so why don't we've got a game against Kent at Cardiff. Why don't you just come? We'll, it'd be great for your family, great for the supporters. Why don't you sort of make it a bit of a celebration? And, we've already run the title, just play in it. It will be a lovely sort of farewell almost to you. And so I did it on that basis, and probably one of those things I sort of regret, because it was one of the few times in my career, well, the only time ever in my cricket career, where I've been whacked for 6 off the last ball of a game to lose the match. We played Kent, and there was a guy called Ian Butler who's a New Zealander. I met him at the golf course only about a month ago. I was talking to him about it, and they wanted 10 off the last 2 balls, and the penultimate ball I'd run in about a pretty good Yorker, went under his bat, and Mark Wallace standing up to the stumps and me missed it, and it went for 4 byes, and then suddenly they want 6 off the last ball, and I ran in. I just bowled the worst ball you can bowl at that, which is like a length-ish sort of ball, and Ian Butler, you could whack a cricket ball. He hit me out the ground at Sophia Gardens. We lost the game. I walked in the dressing room, packed my bags, walked out, never to be seen again. So, so I often think of that game at Colwyn Bay as maybe the game I should have retired, but instead I did it a sort of game later, or a game or 2 later.
Yeah, going back to the Ian Butler shot. I gather the ball was found somewhere on the roof of Sport Wales by an air conditioning unit. It was a big 6, but let's just go back to something else in 2004, because as I said earlier on your cricketing CV, you are one of the few Glenmorgan players also to have appeared at T20 Finals day. Now let's just talk about T20 cricket, because of course you had been brought up in the 1980s very much, and then into the 1990s very much in terms of Sunday League, the traditional 40 over or 50 over game. And now in 2003, this new variant, although it was new for professionals, I know it had been played an awful lot in club cricket for many years beforehand. But here was here was this new type of cricket, T20. I know some people said it's going to be hit and giggle. Are people going to take it seriously? I've got photos somewhere upstairs in my office of a game between Australia and New Zealand where everyone wore retro and wearing wigs. But we took it seriously in 2004. I know we took it seriously in 2003 as well. But we had a game, I can remember the quarter final against Warwickshire at Cardiff, where David Hemp and Matthew Elliott played out of their skins. I think we were 8 for 2, chasing a total of 160 odd, 170 odd. And those two put the game to bed. And everyone was on and up. And we go to finals day at Edgbaston. There's, I think we were the second game, if my memory serves me right. Lancashire were playing Surrey in the first game, and then it was Glenmorgan against Leicestershire in the second game, or the Leicestershire Foxes, I should say. I don't know. Crofty didn't have his shooting gun out then on that particular occasion. But what are your memories of T20 Finals Day, or what are your thoughts about T20 cricket? First of all, I should say.
Oh, I think T20 cricket's broken the shackles. I think it's, you know, T20 itself is probably my least favourite of the formats of cricket. But undoubtedly it's broken the shackles. And I think some of the, you know, what it's done, it's actually now made Test cricket and one-day cricket, I believe, a better game because of the skill sets that people have learned playing the shorter format. So, you know, it's got its place, undoubtedly. I don't think it's a good game for sort of kids to learn to play cricket. But it's a, you know, it's had its place. It's broken the shackles, and I think it's done a great game, great service overall. So no issues with T20 cricket. It has its place, but that finals day it was close. You know, it's obviously real disappointing. You go there and you end up sort of not making the final. So it was a bit of a downer, but it was so close at the end. I remember Kasperovich bowling in the last over. I can't remember the batter from Leicester's name, but he's obviously gone for the big shot. He's gone for a 6. The game's really tight, and it has crept, and I mean just crept over the boundary by a couple of meters. And I guess that's the fine margins that sort of, you know, you find in the shorter format of the game. I mean, if that ball had been hit 2 meters less, we'd have probably made a final, you know, and who knows what would have happened then. So small margins, great fun. Probably wasn't my game, to be honest. I think it's T20.
Yeah, you say small margins. I think those people who were watching the 2017 T20 finals day when Glenmorgan played the Warwickshire Bears at Edgbaston, again, small margins, needing 10 to win, I think it was. Andrew Salter hit a ball, caught right on the boundary's edge by Adam Hose. 2 meters more, it would have been 6. And then 4 off the last ball, and with Salts facing, I know who I would have been backing. But as you said, 2004 was the year when your illustrious, well, not quite the end of your playing career, because I know you've been donning the whites and the coloured clothing recently, but you emigrate with Ruth, your wife, and your young family out to New Zealand. So can you just update us in terms of what you've been doing from a job point of view? And also, you're playing recently as captain of the New Zealand over 50s. I've detected, as I'm sure people on the call have, just the occasional word which is a little bit Southern Hemisphere. I think target a couple of minutes ago was a word as well. But let's talk about what you've been doing since you left back at the end of the 2004 season.
Yeah, so look, I've been in New Zealand now for 15, 16 years, something like that. I haven't played cricket in all those times, but I've still played a lot of cricket. I mean, I know the Glenmorgan players just basically stopped playing completely after they finished. I wasn't quite in that sort of camp. I still love the game. So even right now, I play regular grade cricket on a Saturday at Cornwall Cricket Club in Auckland. Plus, I'm playing in this over 50s setup, which is amazing. So what have I done? I basically I tried to sort of carve myself out of career in sport management. So I was the manager of the Cornwall Cricket Club for 5 years, and probably people are scratching their heads. So why does a cricket club need a manager? But you know, when you're talking of a club of 1,500 plus playing members, right, it takes some organisation, and it needs it's a proper business. essentially. So I did that for about 5 years. I was general manager of Squash Auckland, another game I'm fond of. And then I worked at Auckland Cricket in the operations and sort of community development role. And then probably the plum job I had probably about 4 years ago, I worked my way up to a general manager's position at New Zealand Cricket, where I looked after the sort of growth of the sort of amateur game throughout the whole country, which was a great thrill. We did some amazing things there in the time I was there. But, you know, corporate life, restructures, all that sort of stuff, sort of left there a few years ago. And I sort of had to make a decision what I wanted to do. And I wanted to change tack, because while I like sport management, I really love cricket. And I thought, well, no, I'm not involved in New Zealand cricket. Anything's not going to quite be as good as that. So I've taken the plunge. I've retrained, and I've used my economics degree that you mentioned earlier. And I'm a mortgage advisor. I've started my own sort of business, and I've been doing that now for 2 years. And house prices in New Zealand are absolutely booming, ridiculous. And so I was very lucky to choose that role instead of maybe a travel agent, which would have been a complete disaster.
Yes, although I know COVID has treated New Zealand more kindly than it has the UK. Just quickly before we go into the questions, which have been pre-submitted, just talk me through the over 50s. So is it some sort of golden oldies? You know, you guys getting to 20 and 30 and then saying thanks very much, and someone else coming out?
No, it's the complete opposite of that, Higgers. It's the over 50s concept really sort of came to fruition a few years ago for a guy called Sterling Hammond in Australia, who's a cricket sort of tragic, owns his own private ground. And what he did is he had this vision of an over 50s cricket World Cup, like serious cricket, no retirements, you know, wides the same as you would find in international cricket, sort of similar playing conditions. So that kicked off a few years ago. New Zealand entered a team. I played in that team. I wasn't captain then. We got knocked out in the semis by Australia, who went on to win it. And I know Wales had a team in that competition as well, which is fantastic. So what's happened in New Zealand from that time is this whole structure has sort of developed underneath that national team. So there's now interprovincial over 50s, which I'm sort of play for Auckland. I captain Auckland. And, you know, I was the captain of New Zealand in the second World Cup, which was in Cape Town in March last year. And we were two games into the tournament. The COVID sort of crisis hit, and we all had to find emergency flights home, and there was no World Cup. So we feel as though we've got a bit of unfinished business. I absolutely have the goal of trying to win the World Cup as the New Zealand captain, and we're going to try and get another crack in March 2022, COVID dependent.
Wow. So there I am talking about your cricketing CV with T20 Finals, Lords, Championship, one-day titles. There could be a World Cup winner. That would be a fine collection, Daly. We've got just over 10 minutes remaining, so I'll make a start just with the
badge holders allowed at Cannon Park only from the 13th.
We'll do the questions which have come in advance. So the first question, Daly, is from Duncan Evans, who's actually asking you, are there any young players at Auckland Aces who might be the likely successors to Tim Southey or Trent Boult?
Well, I mean, the Aucklander that sort of burst on the scene in the last couple of, or the last year or so is a guy called Kyle Jamieson. So I wouldn't say he's so new that people won't know about him, but he's relatively new. He's 6'8", bowls pretty quick, can swing the ball both in and away. So he really is the next cab off the rank. There are some pretty good bowlers around New Zealand, but none I don't think of that quality. So I you know, when those guys eventually retire, Southey and Boult, it's going to leave a huge hole for New Zealand cricket.
Yeah,
undoubtedly. Yeah,
I did see a couple of years ago for playing for Derbyshire, a guy called Lockheed Ferguson, who seemed to have all the attributes. I know he's had a few injuries recently, but he's pretty quick as well.
Yeah, absolutely is. He's a super bowler. He's had a few injury problems, as you're quite right. I mean, I was actually doing some coaching with him at Auckland Grammar School only a few weeks ago, so I was having a quick sort of catch up with him then. And he, yeah, it's interesting. He seems to be more pigeonholed for one day and T20 cricket. And I still to this day don't really understand why that is, because as you said, he has the pace and the skill to be able to sort of to get good players out on flat wickets in Test match cricket. So yeah, at the moment he seems to be pigeonholed more for the shorter format. I don't know why, but that just seems to be the way it is.
Okay, Howell Williams has asked as well. What about any of your children, any of your boys? Are they likely to make it into provincial cricket?
No, I would say is the bottom line there. I mean, Luke really enjoys his cricket. I mean, the two of us batted together in great cricket last Saturday, and it was absolutely brilliant that we managed to put on 120 together. He's more of a left arm seamer who bats a bit. So he came in at 8. I was batting 5 in that particular team on the weekend, and I managed to hang around till he got in, and then we had a bit of fun. And yeah, we were in trouble about 130 for 6, and we managed to get up to about 270 playing against pretty good cricket. So that was an absolute thrill for me. He's not at that provincial level, but he really enjoys his cricket. And my younger daughter, Georgia, 15, I mean, up until probably this season, she's always played cricket as well, and really enjoyed it.
Okay, so maybe if she progresses, who knows, with the new 100 competition starting this summer with the Welsh Fire men and Welsh Fire women, you never know.
Well, I mean, it's amazing the way that sport has developed for women, and particularly around cricket. And that's a fanciful thing. It's not going to happen. She's actually more of a gymnast, Tigger. She's an excellent young gymnast who's done really well in sort of New Zealand type competitions. She's won sort of national floor titles and stuff like that. So, wow. And as anyone would know, with daughters who do gymnastics, it's enormous dedication, and it takes most of their time. So there's hardly any time left for sports like cricket, unfortunately.
Okay, well, Commonwealth Games or Olympics, who knows?
No, never.
Jeremy Jones is asking quite a specific question about the game back in July 1997. Glenmorgan played against Derbyshire at Chesterfield. The Derbyshire team then had been runners-up in the county championship the year before. Phil de Freitas and Devon Malcolm in the attack, and you got 142 in a game which Glenmorgan drew, I knew, but at the end of the day, as we said earlier, all those bonus points counted up. Have you got any memories of that particular innings, or have you got any memories of facing Phil de Freitas and Devon Malcolm?
Yeah, I do. I was particularly proud of that. Again, I was coming off a bit of a run of poor scores. And we were obviously having a fantastic year, and most of the guys were chipping in, and at that stage I wasn't really sort of pulling my weight. So while we didn't obviously win that game, I think it was important to get the points for the draw. We actually played against Derbyshire on a similar type of wicket only a few seasons before, and their attack at that stage was Devon Malcolm and Ian Bishop. And I remember almost using my sort of experience from facing those bowlers on that pitch to sort of, for that game. So, it's one of those things, again, with experience that you can sort of learn off your previous experiences and sort of understand how best to play on certain types of wickets. So, yeah, I have some great memories about that. Really enjoyed that knock here.
Yeah, there's an allied question from Alan Thomas, who's asked, which bowlers did you A, most enjoy facing, and B, most dislike facing?
Oh, well, there's plenty I would dislike, because there's plenty of good ones out there. But I had, when we were, we talked earlier on about the combined universities, there was we played in a few games, and one of the games we played against was against Yorkshire. And they had a sort of a quickie, Paul Jarvis, who played for England. Yeah, quick bowler. And we were we were doing well against them. We beat them, and they were not happy about it, as you can imagine, being proud Yorkshiremen. And he started sort of to give me quite a few verbals in that game. And I do remember as a cocky student just turning to him and telling him, I thought you were supposed to be quick, mate, right? And so he absolutely lost his rag at me. And with David Bias, I think the captain had to almost pull him from sort of almost trying to throttle me. And in the middle of the wicket, I'd wound him up so much. And I always remembered that because I faced then Jarvis heaps throughout the county championship in the years to follow. And one of my proudest things, he never got me out. I always remembered back in that university, and I always sort of concentrated so hard when I faced him. He never got me out. So I enjoyed those battles, particularly with him, and play as well. I mean, there's the quickies, of course, because they can hurt you before you get you out. But then there's the spinners; they can just embarrass you before you get you out. So I don't know what's being worse: getting hurt and getting out, or getting embarrassed and getting out. But some of those, some of the people like Alan Donald in those early years in the early 90s when he was playing for Warwickshire was just frightening. People like Courtney Walsh. I mean, during my first championship 100 at Abergavenny, he could just pull deliveries from nowhere, and just absolutely amazing bowler. So I would say Courtney Walsh and Donald were just totally amazing to face. They were brilliant.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's time for just one more question, which again, as I say, thanks to everyone for sending them in advance. And it's come from Paul Henderson, who has said, what is your favourite match? But he says, I think it might well be the Middlesex in 1993 when you got your double 100. So what Paul's actually saying is, what is your favourite one-day match in your career? Was it any one of the ones we've mentioned earlier, or was there another game that that really stood out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the finals are big time, but I mean, just playing well, scoring. I do just remember playing a stock standard sort of Sunday league game at Cardiff against Durham, and managing to see the sort of the team home. We were 9 down, and then managed to sort of hit a 6 with a sort of penultimate over. And I think those sort of games where you sort of you get it home for the team. When probably the odds are against you, the ones that sort of mean so much. So yeah, there was just a game against Durham, which I truly remember feeling very proud of. Seeing the boys scampering around with Dave Harrison at the end. I think it was batting 11 in that match, and seeing the boys home, it's good fun.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The 2 hours have flown by. Wow. We've been talking, and I've got a little bit of housekeeping to do to finish off, Adrian. But if I can just say thank you very much for sharing those memories. I know we've been going back certainly nearly 30 years ago, but those memories are as sharp and as clear, and your warmth, your honesty, and I think, as someone has just said in the chat function, you're a complete natural, and there's no bravado, there's no boasting. You tell it as you saw it, and I think that was a phrase you said earlier on that Viv taught you. We have got more of these functions, more of these events coming up on Wednesday the 24th at 7 o'clock. We'll be going down memory lane again. Another anniversary talk. We'll be looking at the 1940s and the 1950s. Once again, we'll have members of the families from those 2 marvellous decades in Glenmorgan cricket. I'm really delighted to say that the family of Wilf Wooler, a real Glenmorgan legend, his daughter and sons will be with us. We've also got the son of Hayden Davis, the legendary Glenmorgan wicketkeeper, and the son of Bernard Hedges as well, the legendary Glenmorgan opening batsman from the 1950s. We'll also have Alan Jones with us on that evening, because Alan, of course, although it only seems like yesterday, Alan did make his debut for Glenmorgan in the 1950s. So that's Wednesday, the 24th of February at 7 o'clock. Further information about that will be coming out on the Glenmorgan website in the next couple of days. I'll also send an email around letting everyone know. And then on Saturday, the 6th of March, slightly different timings, but it'll be March the 6th at 10 o'clock on that morning, when we'll have the company of another great Australian and Glenmorgan cricketer, who for a couple of years also did his time up in Yorkshire. But Matthew Elliott will be joining us again from Australia. And so that's Saturday, the 6th of March at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'll be sending out further information about those events. But Daly, thank you so much on behalf of everyone this evening. I know there are members of your family here, and I'm sure that you want to have a quick word with some of those. So just on behalf once again of everyone, thank you for your time, thank you for your honesty, and also at a time when life for us in the UK has not been easy. We're still in lockdown, but thank you so much for a little bit of warmth that's come in on an evening after the Swans got knocked out by Manchester City, and when we're not sure what's going to happen to the Welsh rugby team coming up. I know Cardiff City are on a roll, so some of the people on the call will be really happy, but you've brought back some wonderful memories of Glenmorgan cricket from the 80s, the 90s and the noughties. So on behalf of everyone, Adrian, a big diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much, and all the very best in your quest of winning the World Cup with New Zealand. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Diggers. And thanks everyone for listening in. Yeah, hope you enjoy. There's a lot of great memories from me as well.
Great. Thanks very much, Adrian.